My brothers and sisters, the Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew. Jesus said to his apostles, "Whoever loves father or mother more than me is not worthy of me, and whoever loves son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me. And whoever does not take up his cross and follow after me is not worthy of me. Whoever finds his life will lose it, and whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. Whoever receives you receives me, and whoever receives me receives the one who sent me. Whoever receives a prophet because he is a prophet will receive a prophet's reward. And whoever receives a righteous man because he is a righteous man will receive a righteous man's reward. And whoever gives only a cup of cold water to the one of these little ones to drink, because the little one is a disciple, amen, I say to you, he will surely not lose his reward." The Gospel of the Lord.
Well, this past week I've spent a little time reminiscing. I'm not really 100% sure why, but thinking about different people who have been in my life and different moments. And as I was reminiscing, I remembered a story from several years ago. Friends of mine who live out of town had related the story to me about their son. At the time, their son was 5 years of age. And Kim, his mother, was driving, and in the town where they lived, there was an old car dealership, and she had noticed that the car dealership was being torn down. And she remarked to her son, "Look, they're tearing down the car dealership." And her son immediately, as she said, looked very sad. And she asked him, "What's wrong?" And he said, "Well, it's very sad that they're tearing that down." She said, "Well, why is it so sad that they're tearing it down?" And mind you, he's 5 years of age. He said, "Well, it's very sad because my children will never know the town of my youth." And she kind of laughed and said, "The town of your youth is yet to be built." Still being built. Why are you worried about that? And if you think about it, maybe we treat the church the same way from time to time. Sometimes maybe we have this idea that it's already built and fully functioning, just as that town of his youth was built and fully functioning in his mind and kind of declining by a building being torn down. Maybe we kind of think of the church that way from time to time. And we fail to realize the words of Kim, his mom, saying, the church is still being built. Just as the town of his youth is yet to be built, so too the church is still being built. And we have to remember our call in this place and time, not that we've inherited a church, but rather a living being, the church, and the church is yet to be built. And it's really a call of discipleship. That's what it's a call to take that responsibility for the church in this place and time. And really, our readings today focus very much on that call of discipleship. We hear of Elisha the prophet, known to be a prophet, known to be a good man, visiting this family, and the family prepares a room for him to use. Why? Because they know him to be a disciple of God, a prophet. And so he also recognizes in this unnamed woman that she too is a disciple of God. What can I do for her? And then the promise, when I come next year at this time, you will have an infant son. Discipleship. Hear about the discipleship from Paul, the call of baptism, where discipleship begins for all of us. We have 3 baptisms after Mass. That call of discipleship, not just a simple custom, but a call of discipleship. And in that call of discipleship, that call to take seriously our work for the church. And in the gospel, we're reminded of discipleship, and the word disciples actually used towards the end of that gospel reading. We hear of the duties as well as the rewards of discipleship. Maybe not so clear to understand, but that's what we hear in the gospel today. And so maybe a real question for us to ponder this Sunday is, are you a disciple? Are you a disciple? Or are you more of a passive member of the church? Very important question to ask. Are you really a disciple of Christ or a passive member of the church? Passive member of the church would see everything's fully functioning. We don't have to do anything. Disciple sees that call and place and time to serve. And similarly, if you do recognize yourself to be a disciple, the real question is, who has been discipling you? Where did you learn to be a disciple? Who is discipling you? And similarly, who are we discipling along the way? Very important questions to ask. We just had this past week here at St. Greg's a high school religious ed program for the summer, and they focused on virtue. Part of the course focused on virtue. And if you really think about it for a moment, if you are a disciple of virtue, if you're allowing yourself to be discipled by virtue, then that will lead you to become a virtuous person. The other side of the coin, if you are a disciple of vice, you become a vicious person. Whatever we allow to disciple us is ultimately what we become. Are you a disciple of virtue, a virtuous person, a disciple of vice, a vicious person? Who and what disciples you? You know, a disciple picks up that flavor of who is leading them. To acknowledge that I am a disciple means I'm willing to be led, and I become basically what that leader is drawing me to. This past week during that high school program, one of our college students, I believe she's in grad school now, gave very practical advice to all of the high school teenagers as she spoke to them. And she was talking to them in part about the decisions of college and university, and she said, you know, there's a lot of ways to pick a college. Probably look at, you know, the courses they offer and the professors and, you know, where they rank in particular disciplines, and can look at their athletic programs and choose a college that way, maybe by location. She said, well, one thing that I really advise you to do, and this was really a beautiful piece of wisdom, she said, one of the things that I advise you to do when you go on your college campus visits is spend some time and just sit there and observe all of the people. Just spend a good amount of time and sit and watch the students, the faculty, the staff. And why? She said, because you're going to become them. And if you do not like the students or the faculty or the staff, you don't like what you see about the way that they're interacting, you're probably going to become something that you don't like. But if you see qualities in them that you really want to become, probably an important factor in choosing that college or that university, because you will eventually become like the people you see. Very good advice. Each college has that culture and flavor, and ultimately a student becomes part of that culture and flavor. Discipleship. Some of our colleges today have a real flavor of atheism. And so many students I have met along the way, people of good faith who come from families of good faith, after 4 years of college no longer have faith. And they call themselves atheists. If it's traditional atheism, that firm belief there is no God, or what many of us call the new atheism, which is really agnosticism, there may or may not be, we don't really care. They become what their environment fosters them to be. You know, the same religious ed program over the last week we had, and I noted this on Friday afternoon, about 4, I was in the family faith office, everything was done, and I noted, I think there were 5 high school teenagers who had spent the whole week working the program. And they're already confirmed themselves. And I said, you know, why did you do this all week? So, well, we wanted to. So that's wonderful that you wanted to. So there's no paper to form, sign off for service hours. You didn't do it to fulfill an obligation of service hours, did you? No, they did it because they wanted to. Well, those 5 teenagers are disciples. They were so motivated by their own formation through family faith and through the confirmation program and celebration of the sacrament themselves, they wanted to live as a disciple. And what does a disciple do? They want to form other disciples. A disciple is one who is catechized and evangelized. Catechized and evangelized. And in the church, we're pretty good at the catechesis part. We're maybe not so good at the evangelization part. What is catechesis? Catechesis means we teach the facts. We teach data. We let you know what the truths of the faith may be. That's catechesis. But evangelization is something different. Evangelization is taking that catechesis and saying, I have an open mind, I have an open heart. I want to live in an obedient, loving, intimate relationship with God. That's what evangelization is. The evangelization piece is taking the knowledge and saying, my mind, my heart, my soul is open now. I want to encounter God. And then, because I'm living in that bond of love, I'm so motivated, just like those 5 teenagers who didn't need service hours, they were so motivated, they wanted to invite others to become members of the faith, disciples of Christ. It's really the call of conversion is what it is. You know, one thing I love to do is confirmation interviews, and I don't do as many of them here at St. Greg's as I've done in the past. In my old parish, I did the majority of them. Here we have a whole team of people who do them. But I do a few of them. And for some of the teenagers who are maybe getting ready for confirmation, I will let you into the demented mind that you might sit with and what you're going to have to be prepared for your confirmation interview. When I do confirmation interviews, I do not really ask any points of catechesis. If you do not know the facts of the faith, I am not going to teach it to you in 10 or 15 minutes in my office. I don't really ask any practical questions. I ask one question to begin. Tell me what it is you enjoy doing. And most often, 9 out of 10 times, we get to sports. And I hear a lot about sports and sports that they're involved in, sports that they like to play. And so, say football is the sport they mention. So, well, you know, tell me about football. Tell me what you like and tell me what you do and all of that. And most often, you know, they may play, of course, but they'll maybe say, well, you know, with football, I really look forward to going to the games, and our family has a tailgate party for an hour or 2 before the game, and talks about all the food that different people bring, and it's like a feast. And at that tailgate, they're really getting ready for the game. They're talking about the game that's about to take place. They talk about different players and their statistics, and talk about different expectations and hopes that they have about that game. The Buffalo Bills are involved. We know that that's a challenge. That's a topic for another day. And, you know, the standing of our team in comparison to other teams, and if we win this game, we're going to fall in the rankings here. Really quite involved conversation. and I let them talk as long as they would like. And when they are done, I would say my second question. And this is the one for the teenagers you better hold on to. Now that you've told me so much about your discipleship of football, spend the same amount of time and give me the same number of details about your discipleship with Christ. It's a challenge. The tailgates, how do you prepare to come to Mass? Do you get here early? Do you take the readings through the week and read them and reread them and pray over them so when you hear them at Mass, you know what you're going to hear? What preparation do you have for that food that we share, the Eucharist? Do you know the players? You know, one of the questions on the final exam on Friday was, please tell us the name of the pastor of St. Gregory the Great Parish. I did not ask how many got it right. Do you know your priests and deacons? Do you know our Holy Father? Do you know the lives of the saints with the accuracy that you do the players on a football team? Do you have that expectation and hope of the kingdom of heaven? And do you allow that to really motivate you to live your life? And do you see where we as Catholics, what we believe in comparison to other faiths? So often people come to me with questions and say, well, you know, I was asked all these questions by someone who belongs to this church and I can't answer them. Do you really know your faith well enough to explain the faith and defend the faith to others who may question or challenge us? Very important questions. Who is discipling you? Or what is discipling you? We can be disciples of football or hockey or technology or disciples of many other things, but are we really a disciple of Christ with the same proficiency? Today's gospel in particular gives us a snapshot of discipleship, not the whole picture, but a few details to think about. Reminds us of the cross. That discipleship involves the cross, involves suffering. If we want to be a disciple of Christ, we have to be willing to suffer. If we want these children baptized, we have to be willing to prepare them to suffer for our faith. That's part of discipleship in Christ. Part of discipleship is self-denial. The larger culture accepts many things that we do not. Are we willing to deny ourselves these things? Self-denial. It's part of discipleship. Discipleship involves the glory of the kingdom of heaven, which comes with suffering for Christ. Discipleship, we're reminded, comes with hospitality. Just in the first reading we heard of hospitality, so too at the end of the gospel. Anyone who gives a glass of cold water to one of the youngest disciples will not want for a reward. They'll be well rewarded. Part of discipleship is our hospitality we show towards one another, and part of discipleship is that call to serve, even if it's not something we're comfortable doing. That call of discipleship. You know, the church is still being built, and you and I are called to be disciples, to model discipleship from those before us, and to be those model disciples inviting others. Where are you with your own catechesis and evangelization in your life? And who are you catechizing and evangelizing to be a disciple of Christ today?